Hey, everybody. My name is John Harrell. I'm with Ministry Incubators in Nashville, Tennessee, and it is my privilege today to talk to the Reverend Travis Smith from Boston, North Carolina, who is behind ministries like Sacred Ale and Blue Ridge Hope, and it is an innovator and entrepreneur in the conference. So, Travis, great to talk to you today.
Oh, it's great to talk with you, John. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I know we said you're from Boston, but I think your background tells us that you're somewhere else right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm actually in Topsail Island, North Carolina, Topsail Beach. So spending some time with family and just getting to relax some.
Absolutely. Taking a few minutes to talk to me. I really appreciate it. So,
Look forward to it.
So, Travis, we had heard a little about your work with Blue Ridge Hope and with Sacred Ale. Can you tell us a little bit about those ministries and you've been a part of and what they seek to do in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Sacred Ale really was founded for one thing, and that was to connect with people in a third space outside of the church. And one of the ways early on that I saw that was a need was connect with people in an environment where they were not suspecting to have to interact around spiritual conversation, a little more welcoming environment than unfortunately sometimes brick and mortar churches are. So I chose a local bar to do that. And that's how Sacred Ale began.
And when that was getting off the ground, who were the folks you were ministering to in that space? Tell us about the folks who were there.
Absolutely. So initially, the folks who started coming to Sacred Ale, first I found a local pub that would be willing to host it. And then after that, I began to put out some advertisements there and just said, coming up in 3-4 weeks, whatever the timeline was, we're starting this group called Sacred Ale. We're going to be here on Tuesday nights. Gave them the time. So the first night that I did it, I really had no clue who would show up or if anybody would show up. And to my surprise, there were about 45 people that showed up. And the way we led into that was we said, yeah, we had on the little flyers that we put out that this was a place for people to come that were interested in exploring spiritual questions that did not feel like they had to defend their position or didn't feel like they had to come with some sort of agenda. They just were generally curious. And we found that people were very welcoming of that kind of language. And the first night we started off a conversation that was 2014.
Wow.
October.
Wow. Yeah. October 14, and it just kept going for a long time, didn't it?
It did. It went all the way up to the pandemic. Our last meeting was March of 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the world turned upside down, and restaurants closed down, and all that happened. So
restaurants and bars closed, and obviously that was our home. And we had some people who wanted to do Zoom, but it just didn't have the same feeling. So we never were able to make the Zoom Sacred Ale work.
Yeah, because I think with that kind of ministry, when you're really building a ministry of presence with folks and there's actual ale involved, there's something physical that's missing on Zoom. Is that fair?
Oh, it's so fair, John, because what happens in that room is it's really about energy. And ultimately, for me, coming from my Christian perspective, I believe the Holy Spirit's at work. There is energy in that room that really works and it's not just the alcohol. It really is more the conversation because it's so interesting. All the years that we did it, 2014 up to 2020, all the years that we did it, I cannot think but of one occasion where someone was intoxicated. It was very rare. So It really wasn't about that. People came for the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds like an amazing environment to be in, non-judgmental and come as you are. I bet that would have been a lot of fun to oversee.
Man, it was a blast because what happened is we walked into that place where, or at least in our area, I'm not going to say that this is true for every area, but at least for Western North Carolina, the rural part of North Carolina that we live in, the bar was the last place you expected the minister to show up. And so I knew that I was on their playing turf, number one. And when I say they, I mean the environment, not a particular person. I knew that I was on different turf and that it removes some of the barriers that are often there with the brick and mortar steeple buildings.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you for telling us a bit about Sacred Ale. That sounds like a lot of fun, honestly.
And it was a blast. And I have people still saying, now that the numbers are changing, are we coming back? And, after a year and 3 months now, it's hard to say whether we'll come back or not, or if we do, what will it look like? but we're trying to figure those things out right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the pandemic kind of easing off, I think a lot of ministries are going, okay, so what can we do now? What's on the horizon? What can we adjust, or or do we just do it the way it had been? So I wish you very well in that period of discernment as you think about what's next for Sacred Dale. Tell us a little bit about Blue Ridge Hope. I know that's the other organization that you've been part of. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Blue Ridge Hope was founded as a nonprofit in 2018. And the whole goal behind Blue Ridge Hope is that it provides mental health care to individuals who are either underinsured or non-insured. And we've been going strong since 2018 with working with funders who help fund the program. We have licensed counselors that provide those services for individuals. So how that typically looks is someone gets sent to us as a referral. They fill out a sliding scale that kind of tells us maybe they can afford something, maybe it's nothing. And we go from there. But it's been pretty amazing to be able to work and offer these services to folks who would have not had the opportunity otherwise to get it. About 78% of our clients that come through our door have no insurance. And that's so important because elsewhere they would not get that. I mean, there's sliding scales in almost any counseling practice. So they're definitely sliding scales, but not to the level that ours is. I mean, ours gets down to $1 or $2 or maybe even zero.
Absolutely. Wow. And so you're providing all that service to folks who otherwise wouldn't be able to obtain it, perhaps.
That's correct. And you know what we find so important about that work is that individuals who come into our services, number one, they're not maybe going to get that somewhere else. But number two is we rank their quality of life coming in, and then after about 4 or 5 sessions with a counselor, and we're showing a 40% increase in quality of life. I mean,
wow.
You just think about that kind of that 40%.
40%,
I mean, someone
that's
saying,
almost
I feel
half.
40%. Exactly. I feel so much better now about life than I did before. And to me, that's God's work. I mean, that's powerful for me to be able to bring somebody in and know that their life feels more meaningful and their life feels more with purpose than they did before they showed up.
Absolutely. So let me ask, take this back for you, back to when you were first starting out in ministry, when you were going through ordination, doing your training. Did you ever in 1,000 years think that you'd be doing ministry at a bar or working with folks in mental health? And does this surprise you looking back at what you thought your ministry was going to look like?
Absolutely. I grew up in the rural part of South Carolina, and the only idea of ministry that I had was a ministry as a pastor in a church. I never really understood the avenues that were out there until college and seminary and then post even that. So no, I never saw myself doing what I do today. I mean, it's very different, and ministry looks very different than what I ever imagined.
Absolutely. It's like taking Methodist itineration to a whole new level. You're really taking the love of Jesus to the streets in a big way, it seems like, from this outsider's advantage. It's really inspiring to watch. What would you say to somebody who's watching this interview or listening and is thinking, man, I feel this burden to try something new. I feel the Lord calling me to try something that's never been done before. And because it's never been done before, it's scary and it's risky and it's unknown. What would you say to somebody who's in that spot?
I would say be willing to go for it, but go into it with an open hand. And what I mean by that is Sacred Ale did not turn out like I imagined it might. So it turned out exactly as it needed to. It turned out to be a beautiful, wonderful process. But if you would have said that first time we met in October of 2014, that Sacred Ale would look like it did in March of 2020, I would have said, well, that's not exactly how I saw it. So my advice to anyone is to go into it knowing that God is going to do something probably different than perhaps you imagine.
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a good word. Well, friends, we've been talking with the Reverend Travis Smith in Boston, North Carolina. Pastor Travis, thanks again for your time. If somebody wanted to find out more about Blue Ridge Hope or Sacred Ale, how could they go about doing that?
Oh, great question. You can email me at tsmith@blueridgehope.org, or obviously you can go to blueridgehope.org and you'll be able to get all my contact information there.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Well, folks, thanks again for listening or watching. My name is John Harrell with Ministry Incubators at ministryincubators.com. You can find out more about the Western North Carolina Conference's innovation efforts at wnccumc.org/innovation. Special thanks to Pastor Travis, and we will see you all next time.